CIA found the Ark of the Covenant by using psychics, declassified files claim. So I found this report on the Independent, and I did some more independent research and actually found the declassified CIA files that describe the remote viewing session that took place where they used a psychic spy or a trained remote viewer with specific protocols to find this object. And when they do remote viewing properly, they use double-blind protocols. So you do not know what you are visualizing before you visualize it. They don't say, hey, find the Ark of the Covenant, and then you start like, seeing it in your mind, and you're like, oh, it's under Ethiopia. No, they don't tell you what you're looking for, but they have typically an envelope that they will hand to the remote viewer with a piece of paper in the envelope that will have just a number on it usually, and that number will associate to a location. So the person often that's giving the envelope to the remote viewer doesn't even know what's inside of the envelope. It's quite remarkable. Let me share with you the information. This is super, super cool. And I hope you're having a beautiful day. I want to thank the people. I actually did see a couple of comments in the comment section where people had said, hey, Rex, they found the Ark of the Covenant. So thanks for being my eyes and my ears on this. And then we'll get deep into this here in just a moment. We've got some amazing people in the chat. It is I, Shondell. We've got Victor, Chloe, Lucky, Charlie. And if I missed your name, I apologize. Thank you for being here with me. So this is the article. The CIA found the Ark of the Covenant by using psychics, declassified files claims. This was not talked about much in the article. This is actually the project. It's called Project Sunstreak. This is so cool. You've probably heard of Project Stargate in the 80s, where military protocols and other programs in the schools, like there were people looking for psychic spies or psychics, kids that would have the ability to basically read the future. Or there's certain tests that you can use to see how good somebody's foresight is. And I think that there were certain names for these programs. I can't remember off the top of my head, gifted something. But anyway, so these remote viewing protocols take place, and there's different contractors that actually do the remote viewing. So they gather the data, and then this data is sent back to the CIA. Now, one of these programs is called the Project Sunstreak. This is super cool. Defense Intelligence Agency Project Sunstreak. This talks about different modalities and different psychic techniques used to capture data without actually having to be there physically. It's really cool. I don't know yet if I gave a quick shout out to our Patreon page and Purium. I don't think I did. Let me just do a quick shout out. So I am taking this product. So I take the Boomer Boost and the Gladiator Barley every day. I love that stuff. That stuff's a staple for me. Amazing superfoods. And I found this new product that's called Biomedic. And Biomedic you can actually get on this website, ishoppurium.com. This is the best probiotic and prebiotic I have ever taken. This stuff is absolutely incredible. So if you want some stomach support, get some. You'll thank me later. And I've got a code. So when you place your order, if you place an order $75 or more, if you type in the coupon code, there's a section where you put in coupon code, type in Leak Project, that will get you $50 off your order of $75 or more. So if you place a $75 order, you got a $50 coupon code, you're only paying 25 bucks. Boom. Take advantage of that opportunity. Let me know how you feel in a week. You're going to love this stuff. It is absolutely incredible. Unless you've got a stomach of steel already and like your stomach digests all your food perfectly. Yeah, I don't know anybody that has a perfect stomach that I've ever talked to. But if you do, you're one of the lucky ones. So let's get into this article right now. Project Sunstreak. Hello. And by the way, did you know that I'm going to be talking to Dr. Richard Allen Miller? I'm going to be talking to Dr. Richard Allen Miller today on our Patreon page. He is an absolute living legend. This guy has lived multiple lifetimes. He's 81 years young, and he's still rocking and rolling like he's 21. So we're going to talk about a lot of stuff, and we're going to get into the singularity in detail on our Patreon page. Dr. Richard Alan Miller is one of the smartest people you will ever meet. He literally has an IQ, one of the highest IQs ever recorded. And I was talking to him today about what we're going to discuss later. We talked for about an hour on the phone, and he was mentioning that he doesn't think consciousness is real. He thinks that all of this is basically some type of, not necessarily simulation, but there's something behind the scenes that's controlling everything, controlling even the MFers and everything within. There's something that could be like an artificial intelligence, but we're going to get into the singularity, and we're going to talk about the Roswell crash and the singularity, and we're going to connect it to that. So I'll see you on our Patreon page later. And I think it's important to talk about that and connect it with this podcast, because in this podcast, a lot of the telepathic and psychokinesis modalities, Dr. Richard Alan Miller has taught people for years. Like, he was teaching the military and the Navy SEALs how to use their intuition and how to use their inner thoughts. Absolutely incredible. He even was offered to run the OTO, and he turned it down. He told me a lot about what he did when he was younger and the people he was running with. And man, he's got some cool stories to tell. But this is called psychoenergetics. Psychoenergetics, and this is connected to the Project Sunstreak, which is also, in a minute, we're going to talk about the remote viewing session that took place where remote viewer number 32, I love that number 32, flip it around, you get 23, even cooler. But remote viewing 32, remote views the Ark of the Covenant. And this is actually the declassified file that describes it in detail. So we're going to get into this in a moment, but let's talk about this for a few minutes. Project Sunstreak. What is it? Psychoenergetics is defined as the process by which an individual may psychically interact with objects, locations, organisms, or events. Makes you think of quantum connection. Psychokinesis, physical actions performed by mental powers. That's like Star Wars kind of stuff. ESP, telepathy, remote viewing, perceptions which cannot be explained by known sensory means. Remember Firestarter, Drew Barrymore? I watched that growing up as a little kid. I was just like blown away. And now that I think about that movie, the more I think about that movie, the more I wonder, was it based on actual events that have taken place? Are there people out there that can start fires with their minds? Are there people out there that have been trained to start fires with their minds? I believe so. Can I prove it yet? No. But can you prove it's not true? No. Anyway, all right, so let's get into this. Since the early 1970s, the Department of Defense has been involved in examining potential uses of psychoenergetics. Experiments using remote viewing as an intelligence gathering tool conducted by two laser physicists, Hal Purthoff and Russell Targ. I've actually interviewed Russell Targ. The guy's another living legend. He's like in his 80s now, still kicking ass and taking names. So Russell Targ at Stanford Research Institute proved successful. It proved successful. So experiments using remote viewing as an intelligence gathering tool proved successful. Put that in the bank. In the 1970s, early attempts by the Department of Defense used experienced experimenters, Hal Purthoff and Russell Targ, researching remote viewing. It's pretty cool. Remote viewing is an SRI coined term. The definition is shown here. The acquisition and description by mental means of information blocked from ordinary perception by distance, shielding, or time. That's what the definition of remote viewing is. In the 1970s, using several apparently gifted psychic subjects, the most notable of whom were Pat Price and Ingo Swann. Ingo Swann is another legend. I have his book called Penetration, which I don't know. I don't think that's nonfiction, folks. It's got to be fiction, because in that book, Ingo Swann allegedly gets captured by these two twins that look like Secret Service agents. They look like clones. They take him to an underground facility in Washington, D.C. They have him remote view an object, They don't tell him what it is. And then he remote views the moon, the dark side of the moon. On the dark side of the moon, he remote views in this book, which could be fiction, by the way. He remote views naked dudes mining the dark side of the moon in a green haze. Is that bizarre or what? Hello, that's a little strange. So anyway, he is captured. He's taken underground and given a task to remote view the moon without knowing. He remote views the dark side of the moon. Allegedly, there's these naked dudes in a green mist that are mining. That's freaking weird. Ingo Swann is the name. So, and you know what? I interviewed Mark Smith, which is another highly renowned remote viewer that knew Ingo Swann. And I asked him about that book, and he didn't give me a solid answer. But he even said Ingo is an absolute legend in the field of remote viewing. So in the early 70s, the Department of Defense used experienced experimenters, Hall Puthoff and Russell Targ. If I'm getting his name wrong, I'm so sorry. Used proven gifted subjects, Pat Price and Ingo Swann. Psychic impressions included much detailed, accurate information, some of which was previously unreported about. Notice how they blocked that out. They take out the good stuff. So they block that out. And then and it says SG-1A. You know what I think that is? You know what I think that they're blocking out there? I think they're blocking out the Stargate project that was using remote viewers to collect data and intelligence on everything from drug smuggling to foreign adversaries. So the reason I think that is because of the SG-1A there. I think that's a code for the Stargate project, Stargate 1A, the first Stargate project, 1A being the very first protocol or the very first course, the very beginning establishment of that project, Stargate. These psychic impressions were confirmed by human and national technical resources. They gained detailed information about Soviet research and development facility at Semipalatinsk. And then they took out more information and then they stamped it SG-1A. As a result of these original tests, emphasis over the last decade has centered on remote viewing rather than on other aspects of parapsychology, such as mental telepathy, ESP, or psychokinesis, which is the coolest. Starting fires with your mind, fire starter style. You know what? So I'm in Southern Colorado in a pretty remote area. And there's areas close to me that are even more remote and mysterious, very close, within an hour, within 30 minutes. And there's one place in particular that I know of that I ride my bike out there quite a bit. I'll ride up Wolf Creek Pass, which is like a 3,500 foot elevation gain. You're starting off at about 7,400 feet and you're going up to 10,900 feet. Takes about, well, that whole ride is about 15 miles each way. It's about 30 miles round trip. And there's an area on the way up that, like you've got the highway, but you've got these beautiful mountains and this huge ranch, thousands and thousands and thousands of acres. This guy has this ranch and the guy is very, very wealthy. He's definitely up there in the upper echelon of financial means. And we see his private jet coming in and out all the time, like here. But in that general vicinity, oftentimes I have seen several times Black Hawk helicopters fly very low, like doesn't look like it's more than 50 or 100 feet above some of the tree lines out there. And I'm like, and I've actually, like literally, I'm riding my bike. I'll pull over on the side of the road and then I'll, get a quick snack or something like that for a second. And I look up, boom, Black Hawk helicopter. Or I've seen Chinooks, more Chinooks than Black Hawks. So very interesting. So there's a lot of war games and military games that are played out here in Southern Colorado and Northern New Mexico. We're not too far from Dulce. You all know about Dulce. And I wouldn't be surprised. I just get that vibe. Like there's certain areas out here where they have certain experiments done. And I just keep getting that vibe. If you go back and you watch the original Firestarter film, there's this ranch with these really nice houses and horses and stuff. And that's where they do some of these experiments. Man, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Oh my gosh. That movie, I haven't seen it in 35 years, but that movie leaves a lasting impression, especially if you think about today and all the information that's been released about telekinesis and psychic abilities and psychic spies. It's quite remarkable. So this is, I still have goosebumps literally thinking about that film. Wow, it's amazing. So the term was conceived at SRI, the remote viewing term, adopted as the method preferred over other methods such as mental telepathy, ESP, and psychokinesis. The Department of the DIA and the military, so Defense Intelligence Agency and the military services have all at one time or another been involved, not seen. At one time, all have been involved in numerous psychoenergetics testing, most of them being applications oriented. In 1972, for example, the U.S. Army Surgeon General, through the Medical Intelligence Information Agency, now known as the Armed Forces Medical Intelligence Agency, AFMIC, together with the DIA, published studies of Soviet bloc work in psychoenergetics, because this was also the Soviets at the time and the Germans. And if you go back to natural order and just even the tribal, go back thousands and thousands of years, these types of modules of the brain have been practiced, and some naturally. A lot of people have just had this naturally, but when you have a military protocol that can refine it and give you the tools necessary to increase your abilities and have a application that you can use every time to get similar or the same results, you now have protocols that could be shared with others that they can learn to become psychic spies. This is something just about anybody can do. Some people are better than others just because of their natural abilities, but you can learn these protocols. Like, I learned how to have out-of-body experiences back when I was in my late 20s, because I had an out-of-body experience naturally, 2 in one night. Scared me so much. Like, at the time, I thought, I didn't know what to think. My mind was way different back then. I thought, hey, I'm out of my body now. What if something goes in my body and I'm not in there? And anyway, since those experiences have happened to me, I've researched the phenomenon. There's a book you can pick up called The 90-Day Guide to Astral Projection, and it will tell you and show you how to have out-of-body experiences. And these out-of-body experiences are very similar to people that have had experiences with who they call ETs. I was just contacted a couple of weeks ago by a gentleman that I can't give his name yet, but I actually shared this information in a presentation that I did with Pastor Paul Begley that was released on Friday. So you should definitely watch that. There's a bunch of several guests that share their testimonies. I shared my personal testimonies of what I believe to be non-human intelligence when I was just a toddler, when I wasn't even 2 years old yet, that I still remember to this day. And it was far different than what this gentleman described to me that's retired military. And I was real skeptical at first, because I've had a lot of people reach out to me about allegedly being abducted and experiences that they've had. And I think a lot of people are very genuine. And I think that some people are telling stories. And so anyway, I finally started talking to him, and he's willing to give me all of his personal information to confirm his status with the military. And when he described the experiences that he has had with these ETs or whatever they are, not only is it very frightening to him, but they're almost identical to another good friend of mine that has had several defense contracts, worked on military applications. He has shared with me the experiences that he has had that has scared the hell out of him. Almost identical to this other guy. These two people don't even know each other, and they haven't gone public with this information. So, but the reason I'm bringing this up is the out-of-body experience phenomena. When you feel like you're popping out of your body, you start to feel almost like you're shaking. I've described this before. If you've got a pet, so you've got a cat or a dog, and sometimes it'll jump up on the bottom of the bed, and it'll start cleaning itself or scratching or whatever. It kind of feels like that when you pop out of your body, right before you pop out of your body. And it appears that many of these experiences with potentially extraterrestrials, or what we would refer to as the Greys. They can appear physically by your bed, physical, you can grab them, and they can also take you out of your body. So instead of taking you physically out of your, taking you out of your room, because a lot of people have had these reports outside of my friends that I've been talking to with their experiences where they actually go through the wall or they go through physical matter. And that sounds a lot like these out-of-body experiences. So if these technologies allow these beings, whether they're human or not, to enter your room physically, but then to take you non-physically, your consciousness or your soul or whatever that is that collects data that you remember consciously and subconsciously, that's a whole other world of reality. And imagine how frightened you would be if you had these exact experiences and then you had to go to work the next day and act like nothing happened. How would you deal with it? Especially if you're in the military. Could you imagine being in the military and having this stuff happen to you? How would you respond to people? How would you tell your coworkers? How would you tell your, what's the term used in military? Like your commanding officer? That it's just very, very fascinating when I've heard so many people describe their own personal testimonies that match other people they've never met. I have family and friends that have had personal experiences with things that are what people would refer to as the Greys. The experience that I had when I was like a year and a half, not even, I'm still a toddler. Like I'm in my crib. That was not a scary experience. And I don't necessarily think that I was looking at the Greys at that particular time, because whatever I experienced then, and you know what, it could have just been a very vivid dream. I could have had a high fever. It could have been a lucid dream. I mean, I don't know, but I remember it like it was me looking at you, you looking at me, or me looking into the camera and the camera's looking, you know what I mean? It was right there and they were right there. And I kind of think they are insect looking, but they didn't take me anywhere. They didn't do anything to me. It was like, I didn't go on any ships. I didn't go through any walls, but I do remember just looking at them and they were looking at me and we were all just like, I'm like, hey guys, what's going on? I'm up in my crib and I'm like, yeah, how are you? And they're just like, I don't remember, telepathic communication or anything like that, which is interesting because when I go back to when I was just a little kid, I have some really cool memories. I have this one memory where, I think I'm maybe 5 years old at the time. I'm around 5 or 6. And I'm hanging out with other kids and like little kids. And one of them was, if I remember, he's still a toddler. He's like, he wasn't even a year old yet, but he was walking. And I remembered we were all talking. Like, I remembered we were all communicating with each other, but like just having regular conversations. But how are you going to have a regular conversation with a 10-month-old? You know what I mean? It's just really, really interesting. So I wouldn't be surprised if when we were younger, we have some of these telepathic capabilities. And that's why the military would be out there looking for specific subjects that would have these abilities, because if you could refine them at a very early age, then imagine what you could do when you were older if you didn't shut all of those things off. It's pretty fascinating. I mean, I had some very, very vivid dreams growing up as a little kid. I remember the times when I'd wake up and I wouldn't be able to move, and like you wake and you try and scream and you couldn't scream. It's probably a phenomenon that's taken place with millions of people, and only a certain amount remember, because our brain will oftentimes forget what it was like when we were children. There's like and I think there was a study that just came out about that explains why, and I haven't read it yet. I just read the headline, but it definitely makes sense why the military and certain intelligence agencies would want to have agents that work for them that had psychic abilities. It totally makes sense. Back in the day when I was selling timeshare, I know, I hope I don't go to hell. When I was selling timeshare, I was just in my late 20s. I was so excited to see these people that were making tons of money. Like before that, I had done stuff like lawn care, I was selling that. That was one of the first jobs I got into was lawn care, and that sucked. I wish I would have never done that. I mean, talk about being exposed to nasty chemicals. Ugh. Anyway, so I went from lawn care to, I got into some different sales positions. I took an IQ test at the Navy when I was like right out of, like 19, I think I was 19 when I took it. And he had me take this test, and I took it in like half the time, and I handed it to him. He's like, dude, you're already done. I'm like, yeah, this sucks, man. I gave it to him, and I did really good. But then he told me what they paid. And then I got offered a job doing some kind of sales. And I was like, oh, basic training. I'd never make it through there. So I got into sales. And then I was selling boats, and I had a blast selling boats up in the Northwest. That was a lot of fun. Like Sea Rays, Boston Whalers, had a lot of fun doing that. But then I got out of that industry and I got into timeshare. And I was just so blown away by seeing what these people could do. Like I was usually the best at what I did until I got into timeshare. And then I was like, they had a core of about 10 people there, and they were rolling through salespeople, several a month. I mean, I would see sometimes 5 to 10 people come and go in a month while I was there. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because as I'm getting into this industry and I'm watching all these people just make tons of money, and I'm just like, how are you guys doing this? I was having a tough time competing. And so I'm like, gosh, I'm either going to get fired or I'm going to have to learn how to be competitive. And so I started to research psychology, and I started to research things a little bit out of my comfort zone. And it was before then, it was a couple years prior to that when I had those out-of-body experiences where I popped out of my body, and it freaked me out, because I mean, I'm praying to Jesus every night. I'm raised Christian, not fundamentalist, but just a real awesome Christian background, awesome parents, going to church on Sunday, Lutheran church. You'd have pretty big congregation. And I remember at the beginning and the end, they'd have the guitar and they'd be playing. It wasn't real hardcore, like some of the evangelicals and stuff like that, but it was a pretty modern, rock and roll, Christian music, good vibes. Everybody's cool. And, the pastors were always really nice. I just remember always giving them a hug when we left, and just really cool vibes. So I was raised in an awesome Christian environment. And the way that I was raised oftentimes is to think that anything outside of the Bible could be considered evil, psychic abilities, having an out-of-body experience, studying something that isn't in the canon of the biblical text. Like that, to me, I thought was wrong because of my upbringing, and not necessarily because of my parents, but because people that were religious that told me that. So anyway, when I started to kind of when I had those out-of-body experiences, it was very scary, but it was also very exciting. And it made me realize that we're more than our physical bodies. And I started to research hermetics, the occult, mysticism, neurolinguistic programming, conversational hypnosis. And I started to realize a lot of the big time speakers in the media and a lot of the big politicians and a lot of the CEOs and these money funders, these MFers, these money funders, they're using tactics, either naturally or learned, on how to control people and how to control societies and how to control civilizations. And I'm like, oh yeah, man, now I know. So, I've always been very aware of the media and how the media is really good at controlling civilizations through mind control, through programming and brainwashing. But then you have to ask yourself, would you rather be brainwashed or would you rather have your brain be dirty? Brainwashed, brain dirty. I don't know. So I've always been very astute to that, but I really, really got into it in the mid to late 20s. And I started to study magic. I started to study the occult. And, one of the first people that I really started to research, which probably many people are like this, that kind of break out of the religious paradigm and start to study the occult or certain magical arts, was Aleister Crowley. And I read his book 4, most of it, which is like his magnum opus. And there were certain lines in there that I can still remember reading that I'm like, did he just actually say that? Did he just actually admit that? But then there's people later that come out and say, well, yeah, but he was talking about something else. He wasn't talking. It's not literal. I don't know. But anyway, so I read it. It was equally frightening and fascinating. And a lot of it I didn't understand. And after that, I started to research other people with hermetics. And one of my very favorite is Franz Bardon, Initiation in Hermetics. Because if you read Franz Bardon's work, Initiation in Hermetics, he just tells you how it is. He doesn't add a bunch of extra stuff. He just says, okay, you want to learn how to read minds? Do you want to learn how to do you want to learn how to astral project? Do you want to learn how to remote view? Like all of these different applications and protocols, he tells you exactly how to do it. But you have to practice these protocols. You can't just read it and be like, oh, I can now fly through the air at night when I'm asleep out of my body, and I can go visit other places in the world and bring back that information just because I read about it. No, you actually have to study the protocols. And it's tough. Like if you can actually master 1/10 of those protocols in that book, you're awesome. One of the very interesting things about Aleister Crowley is when he talks about Lamb. And when you look at the portraits of Lamb, Lamb looks very similar to what people refer to as the Greys. However, the people that I talk to that have experienced the Greys say they show no emotion. They're like biological robots. One of my friends said she thinks that they're kind of cute, but other times one time she said they made her drink this like gray goo. They slapped her on some, medical table, and she had to drink some gray goo, some weird metallic substance, which is very bizarre. But where was I going with this? This other gentleman that I recently made acquaintances with, and I'm sure we could become friends here in the near future. When he was describing his experiences, he says, these things are, they're like biological, mechanical. They don't have any emotion. There's something inside of them. There's actually what they're wearing those are lenses. That's not really what they look like. They're inside of those bodies. So I don't know. I'm not convinced that these beings, whatever they are the same as what Crowley saw. Let's look into this a little bit deeper, though, because many rocket scientists and engineers and top minds study the occult. And first of all, occult just means hidden. So there are different arts, there are different forms of magic, just like math. If you want to take it even easier, let's just go to Star Wars. You have the dark side and you have the light side. There's two different sides. I mean, you can practice magical arts and hermetics to help people, and you can also study it for your own, or even practice it for your own purpose. But there is good and bad in everything. There is light and dark. There is a polarity in everything. So it was difficult for me at first to like break out of that mindset because of my upbringing that I told you about earlier. But the more research I did into the scriptures and the teachings and the prophecies and religion itself, and the more I started to study hermetics, I realized that a lot of this is actually our natural, it's a part of our natural order. And because of structured religion, not religion, and I'm not going to say like any religion, because I know so many people that are so amazing and they would give you the shoes off their feet if you needed them, that are religious. And I think that's wonderful. I think that's beautiful. But large structured religions have taken away a lot of our natural abilities because of their control process. And whether or not that is by design or just because of the order of things, like cause and effect, I don't know. I would say it's a combination of both. But there is so much that you can learn about yourself when you start to just listen to yourself. And it's really remarkable. And that's one of the cool things about this remote viewing and these remote viewing protocols is you're believing yourself. You're listening to yourself. I remember when I interviewed Russell Targ like 4 or 5 years ago, he said something to me, which is like an instant, remote view this instantly. And I did. And I explained it as like a circular object or something. And he was holding up and it was actually a spoon that he wanted me to remote view. So I picked up the outline of that spoon just right away. First thing that came into my mind. And that's pretty important. So I think that these military protocols that a lot of people that haven't studied these arts and haven't studied these files will discredit that, or they will they'll kind of mock you or make fun of you, or they'll think it's ridiculous. But in reality, there's just a lot more to it, and it's very, very fascinating. So, and as you can see right here, even the military protocols. In 1976, the Missile Intelligence Agency informally expressed interest in the U.S. replication of claimed Soviet experiments in psychokinesis. So even the Missile Intelligence Agency, which I didn't know there was a Missile Intelligence Agency, they're looking at what the Russians or the Soviets were doing, and they're like, yeah, we want to do that. So they did it. And then guess what? Then in the 80s, Operation Stargate was created for remote viewing. And then they closed that down years later. And then the news just went with that. They said, oh, well, it must not work because they closed it down. Well, you missed the paper that shows they opened up a whole new remote viewing protocol, a whole new remote viewing operation. They just changed the name. Don't talk about that. They'll be quiet. SRI developed a small program for them. And in 1977, that's an awesome year, the Missile Intelligence Agency awarded SRI a 1-year research and development contract. So in 1977, SRI is awarded a contract for remote viewing. During the same time, the Army Material Systems Analysis Agency was involved in the investigation of remote viewers concept with SRI. So you've got the U.S. Missile Intelligence Agency awarded a contract to SRI for program to study RV. The U.S. Army Material Systems Analysis Agency also awarded contracts to SRI. U.S. AINSCOM established Project Gondola Wish under DC SOP's HUMINT. Haven't heard of that one. Project Gondola Wish. Have you heard of this? This is new to me. Let's read all about it. Hot off the press, even though it's 40 years old. The purpose to integrate the Soviet and Eastern psychoenergetic intelligence collection threats into the all-source operations support scenario. Wow. Okay, so I'll get into that more. How many pages do we have here? Oh, geez. This is like a 56-page report. So I can do a follow-up on this, but what I will do now is let's take a look at the actual remote viewing of the alleged Ark of the Covenant. Warning notice, intelligence sources and methods involved. This is start time, 9:15. Methodology, CRV. Controlled remote viewing, stage 4. The viewer identifier is number 32. Number 32. It lasted for an hour and a half. It ended at 10:45. This was the 5th of December, 1988. And if you want to hear a pretty cool synchronicity, share with you a pretty cool synchronicity. So I just uploaded a video because this morning I wake up. One of the things I do oftentimes when I first wake up is I wake up, I'm like, all right, yeah, all right, yeah, I'm awake. And then I'll grab my phone and I'll start scrolling through the news and I'll start reading headlines real quick. One of the first headlines I read this morning was from The Hill, and it's like, Maha will make food unaffordable. Americans won't be able to afford to eat because of Maha. I'm like, that just lit me up. Like, forget the coffee. I'm going to talk about it. So I did a podcast on it, and there's like 1,000 people that watched it, 420,000 subscribers, and 1,000 people show up over the course of several hours. It's really weird. Like, it'd be nice if my subscribers could get a notification. Yeah, some of you do. And I love you all. Thank you so much. I'm just referring to, like, let's do the math here. They've knocked my numbers down a little bit to like 418,000 subscribers, which is really weird. So I'm down to like 418,000 and some change, which is, awesome. And then I do a live or I do a premiere and 200 people show up from the subscription feed or from a notification. So it's either I've gotten that boring, and maybe I'm just that boring now that 1,000th of my subscribers show up to the live feeds, or for some reason they don't see the notification. Why wouldn't they see it? It's just really weird. Like, we're talking about what makes this so important that you have to like put me on an island and put me way, way, way out there and be like, okay, we're going to put you way out on an island. I mean, first of all, I'm pretty well balanced. I'll bring up how extreme people are and how they need to calm down. I always say, if I don't know, I don't know. I bring information. I show you the sources where I bring the information. I definitely don't talk bad about people. Like I might be passionate about big corporations that are putting toxins in foods and saying, oh, it's okay for you because they can legally. But like, why? Like what's the, what kind of list did you put me on? Oh, it's like, it's weird, but whatever. It's cool. I don't understand it, but it is what it is. And I love you. Thank you for watching the shows. Thank you for being the change the world needs to see. I really appreciate you. Okay. That was just a quick rant. So let's go back. Oh yeah. I was going to tell you about the synchronicity that I had. So the number 32, notice that the number 32 is the viewer that's identified. And then I started talking about the podcast that I did earlier and I went on a tangent about that. Well, in that podcast, I created a thumbnail for the podcast and the numbers that kept showing up, because I did an AI rendition of, I typed in what I would like the AI to create for me, and it did a pretty good job. So I used that thumbnail. And if you look at the thumbnail, it's got 32 in the thumbnail, 32. And now I'm doing a podcast on remote viewing with remote viewer number 32. See, we're in the matrix. See how this all links up? So we've got the mission: access and describe the target identified by coordinate 781410-110121. Viewer targeting or tasking. What's the task? See mission statement. This is training target 0209 is the Ark of the Covenant. Well, guess what? The remote viewer doesn't know it's the Ark of the Covenant. So viewer number 32 attained excellent site contact, doing very well with stage 4 structure. Viewer also, and that when you get a stage 4 structure, that's the level of understanding. Like I'll explain it to you more in a minute, but that's a pretty solid remote viewing session. To get a stage 4 structure, the viewer also exhibits the ability to keep AOL to a minimum. Have to be careful with editing, though. This does not seem to be a problem at this time, just something to watch for. So here's the target. 1988, December 5th. Here we go. You ready? Get your popcorn. Make sure it's non-GMO. The target is a container. This container has another container inside of it. The target is fashioned of wood, gold, and silver. The target is similar in shape to AOL, a coffin, and is decorated with seraphim. See the sketch, page 16. This target is located somewhere in the Middle East, as the language spoken by individuals present seem to be Arabic. Visuals of surrounding buildings indicated the presence of mosque domes, ? See page 12. Individuals in the area were clothed in virtually all white, had black hair and dark eyes. One figure I honed in on wore a mustache. I wear the mustache. I don't just have a mustache, I wear it. The target is hidden underground, dark and wet, where all aspects of the location of the target were. Okay, so underground, dark, and wet were all aspects of the location of the target. The purpose of the target is to bring a people together. See page 16. It has something to do with ceremony, memory, homage, the resurrection. Ooh, interesting. What if it's a resurrection chamber? There is an aspect of spirituality, information, lessons, and historical knowledge far beyond what we now know. The target is protected by entities, see page 14, and can only be opened now by those who are authorized to do so. This container cannot be opened until the time is deemed correct. Once it is time to open the container, the mechanics of the lock system will be found to be the lock system will be found to be fairly simple. That's interesting. So the mechanics of the lock system will be found to be fairly simple. Individuals opening the container by prying or striking are destroyed by the container's protectors. See page 17. Through the use of a power unknown to us. All right, what page we got here? What is this? I guess he's writing down what he sees. So he's right. Is that, here we go. Here's the outside of it. These are the images that he put together. Guess would that be the inside? Let me put it standing on. What's that? These are actual sketches of that the remote viewer put down. Looks like a tank or like an energy thing shooting into the box is most likely what it is. I don't think that's a tank. Heavy, solid, thick, hollow, old, contains. He's writing down all these notes. What do you see? Still, stone, heavy stone, wood, many rooms, many rooms. Underground, above ground, inside, outside, fortified, guarded, watched. AOL break prisons, sorrow, anguish. So these are all notes that this guy is writing down, or maybe it's a lady. I don't know. It's remote viewer number 32. AOL break, fortress or prison. What does that say? Something people long ago. Contains people long ago. Windows, cubic rooms, high places, desks, chairs, hallway, courtyard. AOL break, Auschwitz, weird. Foreign, Middle East, Arabic, excited, hands, dark eyes, dark hair, mosque, dome, window. So here's the mosque and the dome. This is where they're saying it's at. Doesn't that look like that place in Ethiopia that there's been reports like out that it's actually guarded under there? Movement, people, background, man, white clothes, mustache, energy. Double wall, container inside a container, wrapped, watched by who? Mummies, people. What does that say? With a monument, traditioning many places, or traveling many places, old, passage, flight, Waterloo, mission. AOL, Bren, spirits, ghost. Spirits, ghost? Ancient, tired, lonesome, knowledge. Go to container and open it up. Rescue it as you describe. Okay, go. So the other time, go to the container, open it, describe it as you go. Metallic, gold, silver, blue, pearl, or blue, red. Metallic, silver, gold, blue, red. Will, some kind of will. That's interesting. Wooden, smells decay. Dark, soft, nasty. Why nasty? Decay, rotten, soft, old tissue, cloth. Old tissue, cloth? Is there somebody in the freaking Ark of the Covenant? Is there a body inside of the Ark of the Covenant? Is that what it's describing? Oh my gosh. Wow. Oh my. Tissue, cloth, objects, personal objects. Symbolic, power, trinkets. Wealth, gold, wood, copper, silver, gifts, stone, wood, old. Purpose, significance of the container. Oh no, what's this? What does that say? Bread? Guava? What? I don't know what these three words say. Can somebody help me with this? Underneath it, it looks like it says death, and then resurrection, homage, protection. What the heck does that mean? Wow. Help me out. What does that one mean? Important, historical, spiritual. Does that say knowledge? Knowledge, lessons. What does that say? If for the babalabaloo. Bread, coffin of. What does that say? Plea of burial? I don't know. Please leave your comments in the comment section, and that way we can put this together. And then also in the live chat. I haven't had a chance to look at the live chat much yet because I'm still going through this. Wealth, information, knowledge, hint, what, sinin, burning, searing, burning, heat. Oh, heat, light, searing, burning, destroyed, pain, anguish, horror, terror. Wow. Ouch, death, scared, burned, light, power, forbidden, protected, lasting. Look how he starts writing it bigger too. He's like, the further down he goes, the more intense it gets. You'll notice that his handwriting changes. If you study graphology, you can actually read people's personalities based on their handwriting and their signature. It's fascinating. It's one of the things I learned when I started studying back in, when I was doing timeshare. And I started studying graphology. And this guy that I worked with, that's retired DOD, he actually went to, I think he went to West Point. I know he worked at Langley, and he was Department of Defense. He did some actual on-scene operations. And he talked about some of the studying that he did at college was connected to what people would refer to as paranormal or extra normal perceptions. Very fascinating. So that is incredible. Wow. There you have it, folks. We got 19 pages of information here. Let's see what people have to say. I'm going to scroll down and see what y'all have to say about this. Sounds like Legend of Zelda. Dude, that's awesome. Legend of Zelda. Countless hours wasted on Legend of Zelda, but the music's great. Just kind of scrolling through some of the comments, and I'll put these up on the video here. Baba Dabba Doo. That's what I read sometimes. Yeah. I think if we actually, it'd be really cool is if guys, ladies, if you could do us a favor and actually spend a few minutes or some time, if you could read out all of these words and actually do an outline of every single word that's written that we can read as far as the descriptions made. And then if you can send me an email at leapproject@gmail.com, what I will do is I will update it and I'll say, this is what all the descriptionary measures are. This is what they said. Jess said, or Johnny says, this is just a distraction. And you know what? I mean, it could be a distraction. It's not just a distraction, but it could be a distraction, picking out certain times to have information released. Of course, that's been going on for decades. It's just the way things work. So instead of saying, oh, it's just a distraction, say, oh, this is amazing. This is incredible. Why did they decide to release the information now? Black hole sun, won't you come and wash away the rain, black hole sun. Won't you come? Won't you come? Sorry, I just love that song. Yeah, a lot of info. Please don't hate me. I just felt like I had to sing it. We're in an amazing time to be alive. So give thanks, give gratitude, and check us out over on Patreon for exclusive content. Hey, Mark, good to see you. Stu, good to see you. Timmer says, oh man, I'm not even going to repeat what Timmer says. What are you saying, Timmer? Eclipse coming tomorrow, though. That sounds cool. Shondell says, broken sills. Are those tariffs and peace treaties? And Kat says, isn't that the whole point? There's always distraction in life. There is. Distraction's a good thing. You know what? If you got bills and issues, you better thank your creator, because bills and issues, that means you got a pulse. Halo, not a bad thing. Turn those issues into opportunities. And big up to you, Stu. Will y'all do me a favor? This would mean a lot to me. It'll just take you like literally 1 minute. It'll cost you 1 minute of your time. Will you share this video out with as many people as you can think of that'd be interested? Just send a link, put it on your Facebook page, send it to their phone, whatever. Send them an email. But I'd like to see if maybe we could get the numbers up a little bit. So if we need to share the videos more, then that's okay. I'm thankful to be here on YouTube. I love YouTube. I really do. I just wish I knew what I said or what I did to get me put on an island in the middle of the ocean, because I love the island. I just want to visit the mainland sometimes. And can't we all just get along? I actually saw that live when, back when I was in elementary school. I pretended to be sick that day. I'm like, Mom, I don't feel good. I want to stay home, because I wanted to just watch TV and slack off. And so I did. And I stayed home and I watched that live when Rodney came on, and he's like, can't we all just get along? And I'm like, yeah, can't we all just get along? So anyway, have a beautiful day, everybody. Thank you. Be the change you want to see. Nanny, nanny.